Okay, this is an update video on how to give virtual interviews, how to speak into your webcam, whether it's on Zoom or Teams or Google Meet or whatever the tool is. So, some do's, some don'ts. I want to eliminate as much of the unknown. So, let's start with whichever tool you're using. So, whether it's Zoom or Teams or you name it, the most important thing is practice with that tool beforehand. Usually, you can download a free version and you can practice because guess what? It's going to be confusing to figure out how do I turn on my camera? How do I make sure I'm not muted? Or how do I mute and unmute? How do I make sure the right microphone is selected? Right now, I have a microphone just under where people can see it so that I have really good audio. That's another thing to think about, which is what should we think about as far as cameras and audio? I'm going to cover it in the smallest amount of time right now so that you can get the most amount of impact. So step one, look into the camera. If I do the whole interview looking at the little box with the person who's talking to me, I look sleepy and I look like I'm not really engaged. So I need to remember to look into the camera. Now my camera has a light on it, but I use this very low-tech technique called a Post-it that I wrote and made an arrow on, and I take the sticky part and I rip everything else off, and then I put it right up against the camera, and now I can look into the camera, and that reminds me because it's not always there. Now, I'm going to talk for a moment about style, then I'll talk about cameras, I'll talk about microphones, style. You learned in one of the previous modules, head, hands, body. Yes, one addition. When our hands are whatever's closest to the camera is largest, whatever's furthest away. If my hands were right here, I would have enormous hands. So we just have to remember to keep our hands around this part of our body. It's something that not everybody has figured out, but once COVID started and we had to be on camera a little bit more, we realized, I should be better at this. All right. And so head, hands, body. The other is you're doing your own framing. You should have really, ideally, a little bit of headroom as opposed to being like that or being like this in the middle of, hi. It's like I'm 5 years old. Hi, I've framed myself in the middle. Photographers call it the rule of thirds. This is a third, this is a third, this is a third, that your head would be in the top third. I'm peeking at myself over there to see what I'm showing you. Okay, head, hands, body, energy, passion, looking here. If you occasionally looked at the interviewer and popped up over here and we're answering, okay. Now let's move on to our backgrounds. You should be very intentional about your background. There's not one wrong or right answer, or I should say, you know what would be wrong? Something that makes you look bad. Meaning, if you had a bed back there with laundry that was being folded, people did that in the beginning of COVID. That would be strange. Don't do that because it's probably not aligned with your message. Now, I've done interviews from a hotel room, but I've tried to find some other wall and figure out how to get it just right. You might say, Jess, there's a blur feature usually where you can blur the background. That would be better if we can't make out what that is. So that would certainly be better. My first choice is usually a real world background. So if I were shooting in my main office, which is not this spot right here, you might see the reverse of my desk, or sometimes I take the computer and I put it over here shooting this way because the desk area that I look at has been, made to look very pretty. There's some plants and some other things. And sometimes you could see my second screen and I might something on that screen. You don't have to go really into it that in depth. What I'm doing today is I have a fake backdrop that I purchased from Amazon. You can purchase it anywhere on the internet, but it's put up and now I don't have to worry about a green screen issue, or when you use Zoom and you put a virtual background without actually having a green screen, it does the helmet head thing where it has to choose where to make a circle around your head and it looks a little strange. So I don't love that. Have I used it occasionally? Sure. So the workaround, if you had an actual green screen and you lit it properly, which means just buy some lights and throw some lights, and I'll talk about that in a moment, um, then you can put anything back there. And what should you pick? I would pick something that has something to do with your work, that looks maybe like a real or has some meaning to it. So I picked this because it looks like an interview background. It was very inexpensive. By the way, I also want to point out there are lines here. I'm really trying hard to keep my head between these lines. And before I started, I was sitting here where there was a line coming out of my head. We have to be intentional about those things. We have to really look and decide, would anything be distracting? During the heart of COVID, some people saw that others were sitting in front of a bookcase and they had strange books, or somebody had some object that was controversial. I don't remember what it was, but something that people didn't like. And they were commenting on it. People do look back there. So you'd have to really be intentional, look and see if you had a bookcase behind you. So experiment with those, pick something that works. And here now we'll move to the next level. So we have microphones, lighting. People are willing to put up with video that's not perfect, but not audio that's not perfect. So if I move my microphone away and I basically talk to you like this and you have to struggle to hear me, if you have to struggle to hear me, terrible. It's too hard, people will tune away. So if you're doing an on-camera interview, you can go online and you can get a lavalier or clip-on microphone and clip it on, and it plugs right into your computer. The better way to plug in really is a USB plug-in, and a lot of times they come with an adapter. And the reason is, even though there may be that little microphone jack, sometimes it's temperamental. But you can buy that and plug it in. If you test it and it works, great, you're good to go. But this way, at least the microphone is close to you. You know, there's the headphones that come with a cell phone and they have a little microphone built in. You can plug those in a lot of times and then place it somewhere just off camera or tape it to your shirt or something like that. And that might do the trick if you had an interview tomorrow. But it's pretty inexpensive to get a clip-on mic. I purposely went and got one of these podcast mics that I usually keep out of frame, so it sounds really nice if it's real close to my mouth. But I keep it out of frame because I'm not trying to have it be a distraction, but I want to have a microphone close to me. There's a period of time where I had it just over my head on an arm, and now I have it down here. Make sure you have a decent mic. Now, first year of COVID went by, and I just used the camera that was built into my computer. Turns out I bought an external camera that was higher resolution, and now they make it in 4K, but it wasn't. The one I bought was 1080p. This one today is 4K. And it turns out the one that's built in was fuzzy. Just wasn't good enough. And I can't believe I went this long. If you're doing a media interview, you have to buy something better. You have to have really good audio. You have to have a really good video. Really, for an interview, you should frame yourself properly. It also means not shooting up your nose. You know, I wouldn't purposely, now you can, as a strange angle on here, I wouldn't purposely pick this angle. And I also wouldn't pick this angle. You know, where it's up on top of somebody's computer and they're looking up here? I wouldn't do that. I get to decide. It's on my side. So what we want to do is have it at around eye level. And that's the place to put the camera, and you want to be intentional about a camera you choose. You can go online, you can pick one out. Now, lighting. You need to be able to see me. I have one of these ring lights that attaches right to my laptop and throws off a good amount of light, but I have two square LED lights that came with stands. It wasn't that expensive. It was under $100. Because of where I place them, they're really lighting up the back, and they're throwing some light on me as well. Then I actually, just because I'm picky about it, I have an extra little tiny LED light that was very inexpensive over there because I saw some shadowing on my face, and then it evened things out. And I'm good to go. Some of you may say, oh, I have a window that throws natural light on me. It's probably good part of the time, not all of the time. So you have to decide on that. So make sure you're intentional about the audio, about the cameras, about the lighting. And here's the last piece, practice. Practice with whichever tool you have. Practice being comfortable on camera. I should say looking comfortable. If you look the part, you get credit for it. And then people say, yeah, you did a good job. Then you can go through the other modules. That's what you need for virtual interviews.